Good evening, everyone. My name is Ellen. Of course, I've introduced myself to most of you anyway. And I'm the chair of Church Support Committee, Communication and Church Support of San Fernando. Welcome to our 11th in our series of Can't Hide Behind Not Being Controversial. This evening, David, senior organizer of the Bread for the World, is presenting the topic on food insecurity. What does human infrastructure mean to God's people? So before we begin, let's pray. Generous giver of all, we come to this month planning and preparing for a feast. Who will come? Where shall we have the dinner? How can we stay safe in this pandemic? What dishes will all bring? And dear God, will there be enough for leftovers? Yet in the midst of plenty, there's hunger. Hunger at times unseen and often in front of our face. Help us tonight to be aligned with you. Remind us through our teacher David to refocus the intensity we place from one large meal to the many needs of others. Lead us, O God, tonight as we pray for your guidance and forgiveness in the name of the one who told us all that the first must be last and servants of all. God's name, amen.
Amen.
Okay. David, you're on.
All righty. Well, why don't I begin by sharing my screen? And sometimes that takes a moment, so I'll ask you to bear with me. I don't have to share any sound, so don't worry about that. But I'll just share the screen. It's, as you say, what does infrastructure mean to God's people, from bad to good to unexpected is kind of our theme. But I'll just pause and note that here in Southern California, we truly know it's a sign of winter when we have these 90-degree days leading up to Thanksgiving and Christmas. So the rest of the nation just shakes its head and wonders what is wrong with those people and their weather. But anyway, here we are. So, though I will say, Wendy and I got to visit some friends from Cleveland who were out in San Diego, and they could not believe what they were seeing. These blue skies, wonderful sun, hiking trails, beaches, and they thought, well, anyway, they began asking questions about real estate. So that's how it happens. Anyway, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you so much. Some of you have been very involved in prayer and in advocacy and actions to address hunger. And as you know, that's what we do at Bread for the World. We try to partner with the Presbyterians through Presbyterian Hunger Program, through your Presbytery, of course, through Wendy, and really move forward with education and understanding of hunger in California and around the world, as well as what we can do about it. How are we responding as a community? How are we responding as members of our church and the collective church? And how do we respond as a nation or a state, really society and government? So that's where I think of the bad and the good and the unexpected. Let me just point out something obvious. I mean, the last couple of years, it has been tough, right? We know a lot of people have gone hungry. I wrote down some figures that basically, in addition, over 6 million more people in California were classified as hungry as a result of the pandemic. So that's a pretty big leap. I think food security in California increased by 48%, which is just whopping. So we know that people were hurting. And with hunger, there's all kinds of other things, because hunger isn't an isolated idea. Hunger affects people's health, their welfare in so many ways. It grows out of not having jobs or losing paychecks. It grows out of so many different issues. We've talked about how it grows out of even racism in some of your programs this year, as you've been looking at racial issues, well, racism and institutional racism and things like that. But another unfortunate part, I won't dwell on bad long, because I think this is the time of year where we also want to celebrate some good things. But one thing that continues to worry me is how, even as we're getting ready for booster shots, and we're seeing, you know, restaurants reopen and movie theaters and even stage theaters. We went to a play recently reopen, and that's exciting. We know that in many parts of the world that is just not the case yet. They're still behind us, and there is not yet vaccine equity, you might say. And that's one of the things that Bread for the World we're really concerned about, and we keep pressing this new presidential administration around to make sure that vaccines are getting out to the rest of the world. I mean, I certainly hope that all of you who are believe in vaccinations are going to be able to get the booster, and that will go forward for you. But we absolutely want to make sure that people in very, very poor parts of the world can get on this train as well. So we're pressing for vaccine equity, and we hope that 2022 in other countries looks a little more like 2021 here in certain parts of this country where we've been able to reopen and move forward. So to celebrate some of the positive, we know, I mean, you've probably been a big part of that in your churches and your food pantries. We know that people have responded to this. I mean, just huge response. As I mentioned, hunger grew in California. I have a friend who works at a food bank and volunteers at a food bank and is connected with them regularly. And prior to the pandemic, prior to COVID, they used to serve 50 to 60 families every day, which is a lot. That is a lot. 50 to 60 a day is a lot of families. But at the height of COVID in the summer of 2020, they were serving 750 to 850 families a day, from 50 and 60 to 750 to 850. Huge leap. So on the one hand, that reflects the spike in hunger, but it also reflects the response. And so I think we should celebrate that and recognize that food pantries are stepping forward, churches and charities are stepping forward, supermarkets, private businesses, a lot of groups are stepping forward to make a real difference. And we've called upon the government to step forward as well. So for instance, in a lot of areas through much of the country, and certainly where I live in Pasadena, school systems responded by delivering lunches. I actually had the privilege of being part of that and getting to deliver lunches to low-income households in this area. And it was really interesting, and meeting people there, meeting the families, meeting some of the kids who were going to get these lunches. I got to see what was in the lunches. They were actually pretty healthy, and a lot of families were very excited that food was coming because their kids have been relying upon those meals at school, and with schools closed, that just wasn't happening. So that's something that we can continue to advocate for when we face these kinds of crises, that we have resources to make sure that hungry people don't, or potentially hungry people don't go hungry. Now, another way that our nation has responded to the hunger crisis caused by COVID and the pandemic is through law, through the American Rescue Plan, a bill that was passed earlier this year. And one of the things it did was expand the child tax credit. Now, I actually have a bunch of things that because I'm sharing my screen and sharing a slideshow here, I can't access them very easily, but I can, after I stop the show, I can go back and look. But basically, I have some statistics from a congressional office that's been keeping track of this, that can show how many thousands of children in each district are benefiting by this expansion of something called the child tax credit. And I can unpack that and say that's basically a kind of tax rebate that goes to low-income households with children. But one of the things about changing the rules and expanding it was that now it's not just a rebate for those paying taxes, it's also available to those who are making such little income, they don't even pay taxes. So it's reaching people even lower on the economic order, and that is crucial in fighting hunger. So let me see if I can quote some things here. The child tax credit, it's with this expansion, poverty among Black children is projected to be cut by 52%. poverty among Latino children, thanks to the child tax credit, is projected to be cut by 45%. And among Native American children, projected to be cut by 62%. That is fantastic. And this began in July. And I think some of you probably already know about this, but basically, instead of getting an annual lump payment from the government in your child tax credit, instead it became a monthly supplement. So that was much more practical and helpful for families who were vulnerable. So it became monthly, it was reaching more people. There were a lot of good changes to this expansion. Now, of course, we'd really, really like this expansion to become permanent. Here, I'll come back to that slide. We'd like that to become permanent, but unfortunately, in the recently passed the infrastructure package that Congress passed, it was made a one-year extension, as you can see on the top of the screen here. There are other things we still are looking for. For instance, we want to see expanded paid family leave and medical leave, and that was not included in the infrastructure package. So the recent infrastructure package from Congress included physical infrastructure, but not as much human infrastructure as we would like to see done. But anyway, this screen gives you an idea of a few things that were passed. And so while we might bemoan what we haven't won, I think we should also celebrate and recognize what has been won and some good things that are coming as a result of your advocacy and speaking out. The other thing, I'll go back and point out this other element is more global. For years and years, Bread for the World has been trying to get a bipartisan bill before Congress around global nutrition. And you think that would be an easy thing to do. I mean, who's against global nutrition? Who wants children in the poorest parts of the world to go hungry or malnourished? But it has been really difficult. And it has taken years and years to cultivate champions in both major political parties. We had a kind of instead of a bill, we had a resolution one year. It was kind of a trial. We got them through that. And so then in 2019, so in 2021, we were able to get this bill cultivated and written. And so now there is a bipartisan bill in the House of Representatives and a bipartisan complement in the Senate. And it doesn't really have opponents. People recognize, hey, this is a really solid bill. It's evidence-based. It's trying to find sensible ways to help address malnutrition around the world. Really evidence-based, thoughtful ways that are also transparent and can be measured and held accountable, all the things you'd want. But right now, it's just a matter of getting Congress's attention. So it just has a smaller number right now. I see 27 co-sponsors in the House of Representatives version, and the Senate version, which is much newer. It just has 3 co-sponsors, none of them from California. So we don't have Senator Feinstein or Senator Padilla yet. So, and of course, they don't have any ideological concern with this. It's just a matter of getting their attention. So I still include that as the good, but you also could say maybe that's the incomplete. You know, we still have things to do in the coming months and year to get their attention on that. I was going to ask for questions, but let me just pause right here and just see if anyone has any questions or comments about that. And then if not, I'll move on to something else I wanted to share. And if you have a question, just unmute yourself and speak up because I can't see everyone's screen. All right, well, let me go on. The unexpected for me is a really interesting category. There were some unexpected things this year, and one of them is terrific news to me. And I've got this printed out so I can get this information right. But basically, President Biden did something a little bit unexpected. You know, we've pushed at Bread for the World, we've pushed the administration around food stamps or SNAP, but in August, the administration actually revised the nutrition standards for food stamps and basically prompted the largest permanent increase to benefits in the program's history. And he was able to do this administratively without necessarily running a new bill through Congress. So that was fantastic. So now there is more more reserves in the food stamp program. It's reaching more people. It's more ample so that people aren't just barely getting enough to get by, if even that. And another thing about putting more resources in the food stamp or SNAP program for very hungry people is that when it's so meager that the people aren't getting very much help from it, they have to make difficult choices sometimes about whether they're going to go take a bus to this part of town and then go to this other place and go to this other place to get such little money. But when it's a little more ample and the supply is better, then it's much more worth signing up, enrolling, and doing it. So I think this is going to have a good, big impact on hungry people. So we're grateful for that. So that was unexpected that he did that. The other unexpected thing I wanted to share is about hunger on college campuses. Do you all hear radio reports or NPR things or even read articles about college hunger? Because I've been reading more the last couple of years, and it astonishes me. College is not a place that I would think of as people experiencing hunger. I think of different communities, some people who are elderly and shut in, certainly some children, immigrant communities, but college hunger has been increasing. And one of the things that Bread for the World has been doing is gathering college students from around the country, as well as faculty and administrators, a lot of terrific administrators, to share success stories of what they're doing on colleges. And it is electric. They are really sharing some terrific things. For instance, on the screen here, the left picture, it says Swipe Out Hunger. That's a program that was actually founded at UCLA, but it is at many, many schools throughout the country now. And that's where students can donate swipes on their what would you say, their cafeteria card, meal plan, to people who are in need of meals and food. And so students have responded to that enthusiastically because they don't need every single meal. And we experienced that as parents, that our kids were going to have extra swipes on their meal plans. Sometimes they just weren't getting to a meal and they weren't able to go to the dorm cafeteria or whatever it was. So in fact, I was just on a college gathering on Zoom last month, and a number of college representatives who had not heard about the Swipe program heard about it and are fired up and excited, including some folks from Vanguard University down in Costa Mesa. So it's really exciting to think about sharing success stories and sharing good ideas to help address hunger. Another idea that was shared was that some schools are dedicating themselves anew to support students more comprehensively. For instance, there's a school in Texas, forgive me, I'm forgetting the name, but if anyone needs it, I can track it down and send it to you. But a school in Texas that a few years ago decided to look at this a little more holistically. And so they began not just setting up a food pantry, but other programs in place to help students with applying for jobs, with wardrobes, with support for living situations, for all kinds of things. And as a result of this more holistic approach to supporting the students, their graduation rate just spiked. It went through the roof. So they realized, oh, a lot of students aren't graduating, not because they're disinterested in school, but because they're facing so many challenges. And so the school got very excited, realizing we want to help our students succeed. We want to try harder and look for more ways to help students succeed. Well, I've had the privilege of meeting with folks down yet again at Vanguard University in Costa Mesa, and these people are amazing. They work for the Office of Student Success, and they have a food pantry. They have a what do you say, a wardrobe, not even a closet, but really an office with different clothes for people to wear for applying for jobs. They have all kinds of programs to help students succeed. They want kids to succeed. They want to make sure they've got stable living environments. They want to make sure that they're eating, all these kinds of things that not everyone thinks about when someone's going off to school. So I'm excited about that. I guess you can see that. And I hope that we all could share in that excitement to recognize that students and administrators are helping one another around the state and around the country to address hunger. So that's one of the good unexpecteds right now. let me just pause here and just see, does anyone have any questions or comments or thoughts on what we're sharing so far? Just thinking about some of the bad, some of the good, and some of the unexpected in the last year or two.
I think yeah.
Oh, jump in.
We could hear you, Jerry, a minute ago.
Yeah, go ahead. If you have a question, go ahead. Or comment.
Sorry.
Do you want to go ahead and make?
Yeah, sorry. I hadn't heard about this on the college campuses, but I'm also thinking about the expense of the dining room cards that they have to purchase, and that in itself is a block to a lot of the students who can't afford to buy it. So then they go without or go to the fast food places. But I work with a group out in the desert, and we learned that the Cathedral City High School, that 50% of those kids in the high school went hungry.
Wow.
And I was just amazed at learning that. So
Wow. That's a staggering statistic for high school. Wow. Ruth?
David, before the pandemic, our church was involved with Pierce Community College and Valley Community College.
Right.
Colleges that had food banks. And we talked to the professor over at Pierce that started it, and she started it because she found in the parking lots homeless kids, students sleeping in the parking lot. And so then she started that food pantry, but Valley College had one that was quite a bit more extensive.
Right.
And, so we were able to take food over there and do that.
That's fantastic, Pastor. I mean, college is hard enough. I mean, it's hard to imagine someone facing homelessness and trying to go to school. I mean, that's just, over the top. And so that's wonderful. That's great that your church is supporting that. And I hope that churches would look for those opportunities, and that could just make a huge difference in a young person's life, or not even necessarily, not always a young person, but there are people of different ages at Pierce College and Valley College and other community colleges. So that's great. That's great. Debbie?
Yes, and this is 10 years ago when my son was going to Arizona State University. We learned that for every meal plan, they're given X amount of free meals to give to a guest.
Oh,
so they were encouraged
great.
that if they met someone in a class that didn't have a meal ticket and they would like to, they had a set amount of free tickets for meals for them.
That is really forward thinking. You're going to make us Sun
Yes.
Devils fans. That's great. If I'm getting the name right.
Mhm.
Wow. Excellent. If anyone else, just unmute yourself. I can't see everyone. So. I'll just say one last unexpected area for me is, and it reminds me a little bit of college hunger, because college students aren't the people I would expect to face hunger necessarily, and yet they are, but is military hunger. And there are now basically what you could say food pantries of sorts near or outside or on virtually every military base in the country. And that's military priorities is a tricky thing to talk about. We'd have a lot of different feelings about that, but I'd like to think that one thing we could agree upon is if people are serving in uniform, that they ought to be taken care of, and that you shouldn't have, say, families of military just like not even making it, just desperately not making it. At Bread for the World, a couple of different times we've partnered with Maison, a Jewish response to hunger, because that is an issue that resonates for a lot of Maison folks. And so We've partnered with them to try to push some bills through, and it's been an uphill battle. A few years ago, we had a couple of obstacles in the House and in the Senate, but one of the House obstacle has retired, and the Senate obstacle, the late John McCain has also left us. So hopefully and I think part of that was the political obstacle, was that it was not a happy subject to acknowledge that there was hunger for military families. And it was one thing to think about hunger for veterans, but for active military, that created a lot of discomfort within political elected leaders. But we're just going to have to shine a light on those things all the same. So those are some of the things I hope that we can address in the coming year as we move forward and just shine a light where it needs to be shined. Let's see. I just think, like, in the year to come, there are going to be a lot of things to work on, and opportunities to speak out to leaders around hunger, but certainly continuing to get meetings with key people, whether it's an in-district Zoom meeting or just sending them emails. Carol, bless you for helping get that meeting with Mike Garcia's office. We're still after him. I mean, we really need him to co-sponsor this HR 4693, the Global Malnutrition and Prevention and Treatment Act. But if there are people that you think of that you could invite into some advocacy actions, I would be so grateful to connect with them, because I definitely want to continue to get calls to Congress, letters to Congress, emails to Congress, for churches to have collective letter writing, and really strategic letter writing. In 2022, I think we'd probably want to time our letters a little more, so that it's not just kind of random Sunday in the church calendar, but if we can cluster them and then maybe hand deliver them. And that's, I think, going to be more effective. So say maybe we get a whole cluster in early spring and then another cluster in later spring, and maybe we end up delivering several hundred letters to a member of office or even to the senator's office. That's more impact than the trickling of letters. And so that's one way. When I ask if people would work with me or to do these things, I'd be so grateful for your willingness to coordinate. So anyone who's interested in their church doing that kind of thing, let's keep talking, because if we can coordinate it, make it a collective offering of letters, it's going to be more impactful. The last thing is just noting that we're always going to have more strategies and more resources every year. And Wendy, bless her, sat through a call where we heard from some folks in Indiana who over a couple of years went from really having no resonance, no attention, no luck or success with working with their elected officials, to actually getting self-described conservative Republican senators to listen to them and come speak to hundreds of people about hunger, and to sign bills and to support programs. Like, wow, how did they do it? So they kind of set up this whole program and told us, well, this is how we did it. It was a step-by-step kind of thing, but it worked. And it just called for finding a couple of people at different churches who were interested and would go through some classes with us together. So, and some of the framing around that is, as I say in that bottom point, changing the system. It helps when we think about changing the system, changing a system that is perpetuating hunger, that is perpetuating poverty and injustice and hardship. And so sometimes language that might be used in, let's say, Berkeley or Oakland would not be language that's going to resonate in Indiana. And so it helps to think about just changing a whole system in place. And anyway, that's something for next year, but I'd be thrilled if people could be in touch with me, and if I'm reaching out to you next year, that's what I'm thinking about trying to change that system and move us forward a little bit. That's actually, I think I'll just stop sharing there, but it's only 7:33, but if anyone has any other thoughts or questions or comments, please jump in. And I'm also happy to get you statistics if you ever want them. Like if you think, well, in my congressional district, how many kids would be affected by the child tax credit expansion? I can get you a number. How many dollars are coming into my congressional district? I can get you a number.
How large is your district, David? What area does it encompass?
My district is Pasadena. So we live in Pasadena. It's got, I'm trying to think, of course, it's all going to be redistricted very soon, but we have Pasadena, part of Glendale, up in Altadena, somewhat east of us. So I think probably Monrovia and Sierra Madre would be part of ours. Where are you living, Jean?
David,
That's like
maybe you might have to
village.
answer, you might want to answer how you're the organizer for what area.
Oh, maybe that's another, okay. And I'm the organizer for all of California. So
Oh.
I work in all 53 districts throughout the state of California,
Okay.
soon to be 52 districts. So it's
So the community colleges in my area would be Moore Park
yeah,
and Ventura and out that direction,
Right.
Oxnard, Channel Islands,
right.
rather than within the San Fernando Presbytery.
Right. But that's actually really good because I think the members of Congress from that district have not, from that region, I don't think have signed on to the bill yet. And some of your region, I mean, there may be a couple of different congressional districts that fit into your region or have parts of it in your region, but there may be some moderate elected leaders that would listen to us, and we could just sit down and talk with them sometime. So yeah, I'd love to connect.
It's not that I'm outside of the presbytery. I'm within the presbytery boundaries, but we're so close to the county line that
Right.
to find the places that would need the help would be into Ventura
Right.
County.
Sure. And that's right. I mean, Ventura and Santa Barbara are very different economically. And so, yeah, I would think Ventura, the colleges there could be pretty vulnerable students. Yeah. And in terms of these districting, I don't want anyone to worry too much about that. I mean, there'll be a redistricting plan that comes out pretty soon that'll redistrict California. But basically, in every district, there are going to be community colleges. In every district, there are food pantries and people in need, no matter where we are. So we can do some good anywhere we turn around and look. When?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that most everyone here knows that North Valley Caring Services, which we have a partnership with, was one of the groups that has responded in a big way to the hunger and poverty that was, multiplied greatly during the pandemic. When you talked about how many people were being served daily, that's a huge number, but and they didn't serve daily, but they went from 1 day a week to 2 days a week, and the numbers jumped astronomically. So they would have, I think I remember like sometimes they'd have 900 cars waiting to get through on a day.
Wow.
So it was just, but they did it with a lot of help, and so I appreciate you bringing some other stories to our, attention.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of organizations out there that really responded. I mean, they made it work because otherwise people were probably going to starve, and so it's really wonderful.
Annie's doing life-saving work out there. Yeah.
I'm just realizing all of you except Debbie and me are from San Fernando. We're from Riverside.
Oh.
So we're spread far apart.
Right. But that, and maybe just respond to that, Jerry, that I mean, Riverside's another great area to work on. And there, I'm pretty sure your representative is not on this bill yet. And that would be someone we could, on the foreign bill, the global nutrition bill, but also just someone we could try to reach out to about things going on in the district. So sorry, Pastor Ruth, I didn't mean to.
Wendy, I just heard yesterday at Kirk of the Valley that North NVCS is going to be using the presbytery offices.
Yes, they moved in, not some group, the outreach program has moved into the former presbytery office to do their work out of that building.
Wow.
So we actually had a kind of a transitional blessing day and
Nice.
saw what they've done. So
Very exciting, really exciting to use the facility that way.
that's another thing that they did. I just, could say a lot about NVCS, but besides just doing, people coming to the pantry, they've seen the need of people living in hotels. And so their outreach team, and that's the group that's moving into the old office space. The outreach team specifically goes out to people living in hotels to deliver stuff, as well as to homeless encampments. So they have some heavy duty work, to do with that population. But again, this is just something that they saw the need and they've made it work. So.
How easy, well, not easy. How much more difficult is it to get our senators and representatives to address global issues when they know that back home there's so much need right here right in our general backyard?
It's a really interesting question, Jean, because it's different years. But I've been with Bread for the World for 20 years, and most of that time, it's actually been easier to get people to admit that there is hardship overseas and deal with it than to admit there is hardship in their own districts and deal with it. So I hear where you're kind of leaning with that question. It seems like, well, why would they focus overseas when we've got hardship here? Absolutely, I hear you. But in fact, for some folks, just when they're, I don't know if it's their political orientation or just the awkwardness, we've always had much greater success and bipartisanship on global issues than we've had on domestic. And domestic gets tricky. That's why, sometimes we have to think about, we say change the system or something. Anyway, it's complicated. But right now, when things are very hard, yes, it is difficult to get people to prioritize looking at the global nutrition. So that I think that because of the pandemic has gotten us so staggered, I think what you're saying is more apt than it would have been 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it'd be much easier to get this, but then, and what I just put in the chat room is you're looking forward, that's in my own district, in District 27, I think we have the child tax credit is bringing an additional $194 million into the district and is helping 243. Let me go back and look at that statistic. It's households, 243,000 households, which is crazy. Let's just go straight to the children's statistic. It's helping a lot of people. It's thousands and thousands of people. So.
David, is the 711,000 number that you put in there how many children it may be?
No, I was, as I went back and thought, that was talking about the total population. So it's getting into like a percentage. That the 711,000 is the total population. The 243 is households that are in the district. And then, sorry, and then there's another page where, and I'll stick with my own district, but the number of kids benefiting is 116,600.
Wow, that's so many.
It's a typo, but don't worry about it. Anyway, so basically you could say a little less than $200 million coming into this district and helping 116,600 children in this district. So those are my apologies for the other statistics. I was trying to throw it in there really quickly, but those are the more germane statistics, the amount of money come in and the number of children who are benefiting. So, and those kinds of numbers
ask a
are.
question?
Mhm.
Just about that, then, is this because of the new way of doing the child's tax credit, or with the new program, this is what's happening?
These are the new numbers reflecting the expansion of the child tax credit. Yes. So these are very much 2021 numbers right now. And these numbers are coming from the offices of Congress that are overseeing that.
And how do people locate you?
Well, of course, they
Locate
don't.
the place that's handing out the money.
Right, and
no,
of
it's
course,
the
I'm not
tax
involved.
credit. That's right, it's the tax
Right,
credit.
actually, I'm not involved in that, but that's still a great question. We were creating flyers and a lot of Bread for the World members were actually going to libraries and getting permission to post things, and going to job centers and churches and other places trying to post things. We had them in English, we had them in Spanish, putting QR codes on them so that people can scan a QR code and go to a website so that they can enroll. Wendy and I even made a little presentation to a church in Spanish. Thank goodness Wendy was there. So that the folks at that congregation understood this could really help you. You know, here's how you apply. So there is you're right, Jean, it's hard to get the word out. And it's also hard for people who might be nervous. Wait a minute, is this safe? You know, can I do this? You know, what if I'm a citizen, but there are people in my household who aren't? You know, so there are some households where it's tricky to think about. But we've been trying to reassure people that this program is really interested in reaching poor people. Wendy.
Yeah, I just was remembering back when we did that presentation. I think the thing, and you mentioned it earlier, but I just wanted to reiterate it. The part about this expanded program was that people who don't file taxes can still get it. And that is a huge deal, because before it was all related to what you're tax filing.
Right. So folks who aren't used to filing taxes because they're just making so little money can actually apply for this and get it. And as you say, right, that would not occur to them. So that's another bit of that education. Let them know you too can benefit by this. We absolutely want to, the government, astonishingly, the government is motivated to help and reach out to people who are vulnerable and facing hunger. And I think that's a result. I don't know that people in government are naturally good-hearted. I think that they're listening to your voices. I mean, I think this is a result of your voices speaking out of people in the churches, people, whether they're writing letters, sending emails, having meetings, or just continuing to press for this in so many different ways that we just can't afford hunger. We just can't afford the cost and toll it takes on us as human beings and in our communities of people starving. It's wrong.
I wanted
Well,
to say to the
go
others
ahead, Carol.
watching- I wanted to say to the others watching that working with David is a pleasure. If any of you watching would like to have him work with you in contacting Congress people, he knows how to do it. And then what seems like to me a scary thing can be done without difficulty.
Bless you, Carol. Working with you is a pleasure, is what we should really be saying. So I appreciate you and those at the church that have done things. We've been part of a number of meetings over the years. So thank you. But I definitely covet your attention that way. And not just you, but anyone at your church or anyone you want to talk to. Here's the thing, something they could do in 2022. Let me just close with a couple of hopeful thoughts thinking about 2022. This Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act that just passed, one component in it was pretty interesting. And that is that he was going to, and I think Congresswoman Karen Bass from Los Angeles, who I guess is now running for mayor, was part of this, making sure that there's a local hiring provision. So projects that happen in your region are now set up to hire people in your region to carry out those projects rather than having someone sail in, and the money going somewhere else and paying some other people and doing some project, then rushing off and not impacting the community. So that's exciting, because of course, if projects are taking place in communities of need and lower income, then that is going to ensure that some local folks are going to be hired. So that's good news. I do think this global nutrition bill is good news. Just it gives me hope that Congress finally has this bill, that it's bipartisan. There are two major Republicans and Democrats of each party that came together and put this bill on the table. I think right now, I forget, I had looked at that slide. I think it might have slightly, well, it's about the same, more or less, Republicans and Democrats, but it is very bipartisan. I think another hopeful sign for me is that some of the state California bills that take place in Sacramento rather than Washington, D.C., the state bills, some passed this year and others got delayed, but not outright eliminated. And so there are a couple that make me very hopeful. Food for All is one that we are determined to try to pass in 2022 and make sure that people can access public food regardless of immigrant status. And I'm really excited about that. So I'm hopeful about 2022. And I just wonder if any of you have any, it doesn't have to be hunger related, but if any of you have kind of hopeful thoughts about next year and what's to come and things that are giving you hope and optimism.
It's this series that has given me hope through all of this.
Yeah. That's good, Karen. I've gotten to sit in and listen, just like you all, to a number of the speakers, and I've just been moved and stunned by some of the sharing. Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate some of those programs.
I would say one of the things that I find hopeful is to see the momentum behind some of the movements that are justice related right now, and feel like there is real potential for changing systems right now. And it can be pretty local. It could be within our churches, our presbytery, but it could be much broader as well. And I think that's really hopeful.
Great.
Exactly, to move forward.
Absolutely.
And not return to what we were.
Right. We may continue to see some of the usual political infighting among elected leaders, though I would say they often work together behind the scenes, and that just doesn't get reported because, as you'd say, cooperation isn't sexy, it isn't newsworthy, but it happens. But I share in your hopefulness around moving forward and continuing to do things, and let's look for those moments. Let's look for good signs and share them with one another, because not just in this season, but really into the new year, we're going to want to claim every victory, and we're going to want to celebrate every bit of good news. I mean, good news should always be shared. So I look forward to hearing good news in your lives, in your churches, and your communities, and I hope that we'll be able to exchange those in the months to come. So I think I should probably wrap up here, but just I wonder if someone would be willing to close us with a prayer. Oh, Pastor Ruth, thank you.
Let us pray together. Gracious God, we thank you for Bread for the World, for David, for the work that is being done on behalf of children in this country to enable them to have more to eat and more money for their families. We're grateful for bipartisan Congress people working together and hope to see more of that. We are also pleased with the national focus on hunger and the importance of the whole world needing food and being cared for. May we think about 2022 and what to do in our churches. Use resources like Bread for the World and David, who works all throughout California, and know that hand delivering makes a difference. To show up with a letter makes a big difference. Thank you for this time, and thank you for our presbytery. Thank you for each of you being with us tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, David.
Continuing this series.
Very
It's been
much
wonderful.
appreciate you
Thank you.
being here with us tonight. Thank you.
Yes, thank
Any
you, David.
questions for David before we close up? I just want to remind everybody that our committee is now working on our 12th series, and it'll be in January, and it'll be the unhoused. We'll be talking about the unhoused on some of our church campuses and the communities near our church campuses. And it'll be a round table. We've got a title. The date is going to be either the 25th or the 27th of January. We've got that. And it'll be in the evening, 5 p.m. And we've titled it, What is a Faithful Response to Homelessness? And it'll be a roundtable forum. So we hope that all of you and your friends join us in January. So, Ruth?
I might say to this group that Ann Heyman is going to be our moderator.
Yes, yes.
So that'll
Yeah,
be worthy to
that'll
come.
Yeah. And we're going to have a police person on the round table. We're going to have somebody who's the director of a homeless shelter. And what's the third one? Well, there's a third one, and at the moment it just went out of my brain. Oh, I know, a pastor. Woo! Woo! A pastor who has experienced the unhoused near his campus or her campus. So please join us. It's going to be very interesting. Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for this evening. That was very helpful, David. Thank you. And
Thank
Wendy.
you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. Yeah, I learned that.
Bye.
It was interesting. Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.